Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd and this is my review of the Orville episode called Lasting Impressions. And I thought it was a really cute episode, a lot of funny scenes, especially with that whole B-plot with Bortos and Clyden getting addicted to cigarettes. I always loved all the Moclan characters, even the ones who appear once in a while. By the way, there is a lot of attention to detail on this show. Whenever a Moclan character appears, he still has similar behavioral traits, he still kind of talks the same way and stuff. So this show has been really consistent, really paying attention to details like that, which I really appreciate. And Bortos and Clyden are always funny. And the episode also had a cameo by Tuvok from Voyager, so that was great. And he brought on board all kinds of stuff for the museum, which he found in a time capsule from our time. And among them there is a pack of cigarettes, and then Bortos asks what that is, and he smells it and likes it, and then later on we see that he started smoking. By the way, that scene kind of reminds me of a Deep Space Nine scene in which Nog was selling all his belongings, and then Worf found something. I think it was a tooth sharpener or something like that, and then he liked it and took it, so a little bit similar to that. So here Bortos finds the cigarettes and it gets him curious, and then he replicates cigarettes in his room and starts smoking with Clyden, and they both get addicted to cigarettes. I thought that was hilarious, and also it kind of fits what we know about the Moclans, because they come from a very polluted planet, and so it makes sense for them to like smoking, because maybe it reminds them of their home planet. And for a moment I kind of thought maybe it's not very educational, because they showed them kind of smoking and enjoying, and I thought this is not really educational. But later on in the episode they did deal with the dangers of smoking, because it gets addictive, and also they do mention how unhealthy it is. And so in the end of the day the episode did have an educational message, and so I'm okay with that, and all that stuff was really hilarious. So that was my favorite parts of the episode. And the other plot is about Gordon getting curious at a woman he saw on the cell phone they found from the past. They managed to activate the cell phone, and he sees a video of her and kind of falls in love with her, and then recreates her in the holodeck, sort of simulator. And that reminds me of a few TNG episodes in which Geordi was always falling in love with women he doesn't really know, who might not be real. For example, the episode Aquel, he found the logs of a woman who was missing, and then he watched all her personal diaries, her logs, and then he kind of fell in love with her without ever meeting her. And also in the episode Booby Trap, he recreated a real woman based on computer logs. He made her in the holodeck and then fell in love with her. And then there was a funny sequel episode later in the series called Galaxy's Child, in which the real woman came on board the ship and she was nothing like that simulation, so that was funny. Geordi was kind of shown to be a loser with women early in TNG, and so he always kind of fell in love with the first woman who even looks at him, and so often it was just simulations. And so it's kind of the same idea here, but it was done totally differently, so I'm not complaining at all. I'm simply pointing out what probably inspired it, but it was done totally differently in this episode, so it felt like watching something totally new. So it's not a ripoff, it's not an imitation, and so I'm totally fine with what they did in this episode. And a lot of the episode is taking place in the simulator, so it's like watching kind of a soap opera of today, but that's fine. And the character of Gordon also didn't have that much luck with women, and so it does make sense, it fits his character based on what we saw. And the acting was pretty good, so it was believable, so I was totally into it, and I liked the story. And it was done in a totally different way from any TNG episode. Actually, it did have another similarity to that episode, in which Riker fell in love with a holodeck woman also. And they even had a scene in which they went into a bar and they were playing there and stuff. So it was a little bit similar, so I can see the similarities, I see the inspirations. There was a little bit of similar dialogue when the people in the simulation, when they saw Gordon in his Orville uniform, they commented that it looks like a pajama. That reminds me of a whole bunch of episodes in Star Trek. Whenever someone in the past saw a Starfleet uniform, he always thought it's a pajama, and so that's kind of a reference to that, I think, the same kind of joke, even though the uniforms of the Orville don't look as silly as some of the Star Trek uniforms, which were always very tight, looking like all kinds of, spandex. But the Orville uniform actually looks more like a uniform, so probably people wouldn't poke fun at that. And by the way, I also like how in these uniforms they can unzip them, and whenever they're off duty you can immediately tell, because whenever they go to the bar or when they meet each other off duty, you can kind of tell that immediately by the way they wear their uniforms. So they always open it up after their shift is over, and when they're on duty it's always closed, and that way you can kind of distinguish. That's something I just wanted to mention for a while, something I like about these uniforms on the show. Something that I did find kind of odd is how easily the computer created that simulation just by scanning the phone. It just created that perfect simulation right away. It seemed a little bit too easy. Maybe they should have added a few glitches in the beginning to make it more believable, because it was all kind of too good to be true. And I did like how he tried to play with the program later to try to fit his needs, but I also liked how in the very end he decided to let it go, because everybody were telling him that it's unhealthy to be dating someone who isn't real. And also I liked it how he realized that once he begins manipulating the program, then that person doesn't really feel real anymore. It becomes the person that he is programming and not a true real person that he liked before. And then he decides to give up on this program. And there was also some dialogue he had with Kelly in the end, which reminds me of a dialogue between Wesley and Guinan in that episode in which Wesley fell in love with some woman, and then she turned out to be a shapeshifter and had to go away. And then Wesley has the conversation with Guinan, telling her, "I'll never feel this way again to anyone," and Guinan tells him, "You're right," which was kind of surprising but very truthful. And so we have kind of similar scenes with Kelly, not any kind of exact dialogue, but just the spirit of things is very similar. Very often I notice that Kelly is kind of the character who delivers these speeches, these monologues, which sounds like all kinds of lessons that we saw in Star Trek as well. And Kelly is always the one who kind of delivers those ideas in direct dialogue. So overall I thought it was a cute episode, nothing epic, nothing really spectacular. But very relaxing, fun episode, and all the scenes with Bortus and Clyden were really hilarious, so that was my favorite part of it. And it also kind of captures the spirit of all the silly aliens in Star Trek, always with their silly misunderstandings and silly behavior, and all that stuff was really fun in Star Trek. And so in the Orville they make it even more fun, they make it even more comedic, which is great. So that's all I have to say about this episode. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and we can discuss it in the comment section. I hope it's been fun to listen to, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.